Hello folks, welcome to another video on the Tarmac Terrorist channel. If you're a subscriber, welcome back, great to see you. I've got some questions to answer for you. If you're not a subscriber and you just found the channel, welcome. I hope you find this video useful or entertaining. If you do like my content and you want to see more, have a think about hitting that subscribe button for future updates on new videos. So in today's video, I've got a few questions to answer. My last video was all about how Nvidia image scaling can help you improve your performance in terms of frame rates in your favourite racing simulations. Not only racing simulations, in all sorts of games actually, it can really help. And also see if you can near enough double your frame rates as we did in the last video. So in the last video we were looking at how Nvidia image scaling, or NIS, which is how I shall refer to it from now on in this video, actually near enough doubled our frame rates in Automobilista 2 by Reza Studios. We went from, but without changing any graphics settings in game, we went from 45 frames per second to 85 frames a second. So that was near enough double. So the main questions I have been asked about this is, one, does NIS work for triple screens? Does it work for VR? And, quite a popular one this was, how well does it work for Rfactor 2 by Studio 397? So we're going to look at Rfactor 2 specifically today. So to answer those questions very quickly, one, no, it doesn't work for triple screens yet. Because if you use something like Nvidia Surround, it will take an image and split it between 3 screens, but it's one image. So it will have a huge horizontal or lateral resolution, and it will have probably a normal vertical resolution, but huge horizontally. And there are no such resolutions in NIS currently that can upscale to that. Now, hopefully, Nvidia will cotton on to the fact that actually NIS, it would be incredibly useful for people using triple screens, even if you've got a monster graphics card. I know people with monster graphics cards who are running on triple screens, trying to run stuff like Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is quite intensive on frames per second, and even they struggle, so NIS would really help them out. But it does work on single screens, and especially if you've got a slightly awkwardly sized screen like mine, which is an ultra wide 3440 by 1440 native resolution. And no, it does not work in VR, because in VR you've got super sampling to help you out with frame rates. But yes, it does work for single screens. So we're going to have a look at Rfactor 2 today, and in the last video I time-stamped the video so you could flick through to different parts of it. I'm afraid in this video, guys, you're going to have to bear with me. I can't timestamp this video because with Rfactor 2 it's a bit complicated. This video it's been a nightmare to make this video because of the nature of Rfactor 2 and to find where NIS can actually help. So you're going to have to bear with me. If you haven't got time to watch the whole video now, you know, save it and come back and watch the rest later. So, does it work with Rfactor 2? Yes and no. Yes and no. You can double your frame rates, but only in certain scenarios. You see, Rfactor 2 has got a myriad of content. Some of it, it's been around since 2013, so it's been around a long time. Some of the old content is running on very low graphics, doesn't have PBR shaders, things like that. And then the modern, most up-to-date content, of course, has all the bells and whistles. And it works better with that stuff. Also, Rfactor 2 is very much like AMS2 in that it doesn't put a hell of a lot of load on your CPU, but it does on the graphics card. Unlike something like Assetto Corsa Composizione by Kunos, which does put a pretty good load on your graphics card, but also puts a huge load on your CPU. So you probably wouldn't see great results with NIS in ACC. But you can, it was very simple to get a good result in Automobilista 2. Not so much with Rfactor 2 though, because it's just a bit awkward. Like I said, you're going to have to bear with me because this is just tricky. Right, so look, where does it work? If you're running few cars on track, if you're running with low graphics settings, you're not taxing your graphics card. If you use this, you're not going to see a massive improvement. You know, a few frames per second maybe. If you are tanking your graphics card and running it at 100%, and you're using really super high graphics cards and you're really struggling with frames, and if you're using huge fields of cars, that's where it might help you. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go out on track. We're going to use one of the most up-to-date tracks, Daytona. We're going to use one of the most up-to-date cars, the BMW M4, and we're going out on track on a stormy day, so there's going to be rain and spray and reflections to really stress out the graphics card. And also we are going to be running with 60 cars on track, 59 AI and me. Oh, I didn't have my microphone down. So we're really taxing the graphics. Not only that, we are going to be, these are my graphic settings, we are going out on the ultra preset, so everything is up to ultra or high or full. We've got all of the MSAA available, post effects at ultra, and for each one of the scenarios I'm going to demonstrate in, we're going to be running at 100 Hertz. This is my native screen resolution. We'll be using different resolutions for this. I will be showing you how to turn this or enable this as well, and for each one we're going to be using full screen. You want to use full screen settings for this. Okay, so let's try and get on with this scenario now. If you try this and you use different cars, different tracks, different graphic settings, everything else, and it doesn't work, please don't blame me, because it's really specific to what track you use. All sorts of things in Rfactor 2. Even if you go out on track and your frame rates are okay, weird things will happen with Rfactor 2. Like if you restart a race and you're anywhere near tanking your graphics card, but your frame rates are fine on the first go, if you then restart, you might drop in frame rates by about 40%. It's just the nature of Rfactor 2. So let's load up the track. And as we're loading up the track, and with this amount of cars and these graphic settings at this resolution, I'm not expecting good frame rates, okay? Anyway, we are nearly at full-on loading. Oh, another important thing, by the way. These tests are being done on the public release of Rfactor 2, the main version, not the release candidate version. Don't try this on the release candidate version because the frame rates on that are very up and down. I'm sure they'll be all stabilized by the time it becomes public, but they're a bit up and down, so it's not going to work quite as well with that. Try this on the main public build. 98%. Come on, it gets really slow at the end when it's loaded up. Doesn't Rfactor 2 does. 100%. Okay, another few seconds and we should have a track in front of our face, and we'll see what our frame rates are going to be, and they're going to be dire. They are going to be dire. Here we are. So you should be able to see in the top left hand corner my frame rate counter in green. If that's a bit hard to see, don't worry, I'll be reading out the numbers as we go, which will make it hard for me to drive because I'll be staring up here and not looking at the road, but I'll try. So we've got 11 frames per second at the moment, which is dire, completely undrivable and totally unacceptable in a racing sim. Let's see what happens when we get out on track. Yeah. 9 frames per second, 8. The other thing about Rfactor 2 is the frame rates do tank immediately before the lights go on. So they're settled out at 11 frames per second now. It's stuttering all over the place. 12 frames per second. It's horrible. It's not good. 12 frames per second. 13 frames per second. Remember, we've got everything turned up to full and ultra. We're only going to go up just past round this corner here. 13 frames per second. 14 frames per second. Probably because we're getting a little bit further away from the back of the pack. 15 frames per second. 12 frames per second as we get closer. So, as you can see, that is completely unacceptable. There is no way in hell you could enjoy racing that. Okay, so can we get a performance increase by using this? Well, first of all, I'm going to have to show you how to turn it on. If you don't know already, some of you probably do, but for those of you who don't, I'll show you now. So I'm going to have to jump out of Rfactor 2. So here we are now back on the desktop with me Tarmac Terrorist logo. I drew that, I did. And we're going to turn on this. So there's two ways of doing this. I'll show you the slightly more complicated way first. It's only slightly more complicated. And then I'll show you the super duper simple way of doing it. So if you go through Nvidia control panel, open that up. And if you come up to your menu here and go to 3D settings, go to your global tab, you'll see image scaling. And you want to turn that on, then hit OK, and very importantly, it won't do anything unless you click apply down here on the bottom right. So you click apply, your screen is going to go blank for a few seconds, then it'll come back, and Nvidia image scaling is now turned on. And if you go to change resolution, oh, and by the way, when I talk about resolutions, if we change our resolution, we're changing the resolution to one of the available NIS resolutions in-game, not your native resolution of your desktop, because you don't want that changing. So, and that was a bit of confusion. That was a source of confusion in the last video. So yeah, don't change your native resolution. So you keep your desktop resolution at your native. There's my native, and there's all your normal resolutions underneath. But then up here, you can see there are 5 new resolutions, and these are all your scaling resolutions, your NIS resolutions, from 50% scaling to 85. And we're going to drop down to the lowest one when we get in game, just to see what kind of a performance that can give us. Now, obviously, when we get in game, it's upscaling, so it's not going to be as crisp an image, but it's going to be a hell of a lot better than if you tried to go down to a similar resolution without using NIS. But it's not going to look too bad. So that's how you turn that on in the Nvidia control panel. But we're just going to turn that back off again so I can show you the super duper simple way of doing it. Neither way is particularly complicated. So we've applied that and it's back to normal. So the other way of doing it is if we use GeForce Experience, Nvidia GeForce Experience. And you come up to your little cog wheel on the right hand side. Well, you may not be able to see that because it might be under my face, under my webcam, but if you use Nvidia Experience, you'll know where this is. Click your cog wheel for settings. There we are, we're in settings now. And you come down to here, you see you've got image scaling. Make sure you're on the most up-to-date drivers, or reasonably new drivers. And then you want to turn that on. There you go. And it's on. Screen went blank, came back again. Now that's on. That's all you need to do. So now that that is active, we need to go back into Rfactor 2 and change the resolution. This is another thing that can be slightly awkward. But there are 2 ways of doing it. You can either go in-game and change the resolution. I would recommend restarting the game after you've done it. Or you can go to your library, right-click Rfactor 2, and, not right-click, sorry, just click on it, click play, and it'll give you the option to either play Rfactor 2 or launch your graphics. You want to go in and launch your graphics. And then we come into our resolutions here. Let's get that back to 100 Hertz. And now you will find, before you wouldn't have seen some of these resolutions in the list, but now the NIS resolution's in there. So the lowest NIS resolution was 1720 by 720. And there you go. That's now on. And now when we jump back into Rfactor 2, it should be at that resolution. It's going to render at that small resolution and upscale it to your native resolution so it will fit your screen. When it opens, it might be sort of in the corner of your screen, but once you get in the game here, there we go, it goes full screen. You might say, why bother using this? Why not just drop your resolution? Well, because I've got an awkward size screen, there's only really 2 resolutions I can use, and one of them comes with its own problems. The screen gets a bit washed out, and all of the other resolutions don't fit the screen properly, and there's stretching, and or there's bars, it's black bars. It's not good. So we're back in now. And let's just check the graphic settings. There we go. And for some reason it's gone down to 50 Hertz again. Let's just apply that. So it's back to 100 Hertz just to keep it, just to keep a good baseline here, keep things the same. So we're going to run that test again now, and see if we get a frame rate increase. Okay, and I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to make you watch the whole loading screen. So I'll see you in a moment after it's loaded. Okay, so here we are. The track has loaded, and looking at our frame rate counter, it's at 26. And it was about 8 last time. That's just on this screen here before we get on track. So that's already more than double the frame rates. And I know 26 is still not, acceptable. But like I said, bear with me. This is one of the reasons I didn't timestamp this video. It's just, yeah, you need to see it. So let's see what happens when we get on track. Now remember, just before the lights go green, as soon as you get on track, the graphics will tank and then come back up again. So it'll start off very low, and just before we start driving, we should see an increase. Here we go. Can we double our frame rate? Because last time on track we were at about 10 to 14, so we need 20 to 30 to double that frame rate. Let's see how we get on. And 19, 16. Now it's going up 24, 26 frames, 28 frames per second. So that is more than double already from 10. As we start to see what happens when we get round the track a bit. 27, 28. Going back down again to 23. 25. Okay, 30 frames per second. 27. Right, 29. Will we get back up to 30 again? 31 frames per second. 37 frames per second. 39. 46 frames per second. 49 frames per second. So there you go. That is that's doubled the frame rate, but obviously you don't want to be racing at 40 frames per second, I'm sure. So let's jump out of here. And this is the reason I didn't timestamp the video, because Rfactor 2 is just complicated, and it's just not as simple as, say, it was with AMS2. So I'm going to have to jump out, reset back to normal graphics, and then I'm going to show you something else. So back in a minute when I've turned this off and we're back to normal graphics. So here we are back in the game again. I've turned off this. We are back to our non-upscaled resolution of 3440 by 1440. So as you saw, we just doubled the frames per second, but it's still pretty useless because they were so low in the first place. So what do I think this would be useful for? And I want to hear your thoughts, by the way. Please let me know how you get on with this in the comments, if you found a way in which it works much better, or if you found no improvement at all. I'd love to hear from you. Now, the thing is with Rfactor 2, it's got a lot of graphic settings. A lot of things you can change individually or by presets, and then you've got your display settings, which make a hell of a difference as well. In some sims, in some games, you don't get a huge margin of difference in performance with the graphics settings. They might be quite limited. In Rfactor 2, it's a huge margin. You turn everything down to low, and your graphics will, your frames per second will go way up. Similarly with certain settings you won't get a big change from. Other settings you will. So, I think this would be useful if you're running on a really high-end card. You've got everything at ultra, and the graphics are tanking just a little bit because your frames per second will be pretty decent. But if you want a bit more, you can then use the upscaling to help you out. And also, you don't have to use such a huge degree of it. You know, rather than using the lowest one at 50%, you could use top one at 85%, and it looks very, very similar to your normal resolution then. But if you want to have the sim running better with that many cars on track, there's a few simple things you can do. If you just come in down here and just take your car detail, sorry, if you take your circuit detail from full to high, texture detail from full to high, actually you can leave your texture detail full, but take your cars, both opponents and player detail down to high as well. Also special effects from ultra to high, shadows from ultra to high. Take your soft particles maybe down to low. All that doesn't do all that much. Raindrops down to let's just go to medium, and medium on road reflections. So it still gives you most of your reflections. Environment reflection, we'll leave that on high, and then just come down here with your post effects. Take that down to medium. You probably don't want to go lower than that if you still want your sun rays. If you go lower than that, you won't get them so much. And you can leave your MSAA, or at least on my system with my setup, I can leave it where it is. So just by making those few changes, in fact, let's take the cars down to medium as well. By making those few changes, we should have made a massive difference to the performance, even at this full resolution, similar to or possibly even better to what you would get with NIS. So you might be thinking, well, why use NIS at all? And like I say, I think it would be useful if you're running on a high-end card and you are tanking your graphics. If you lower these settings and you go out on track with NIS turned on, you will find that you'll hardly see any improvement, because with these graphics, and well, you'll see when we get out on track. I'll let it load and I'll come back to you. See you in a moment. So that was a very short moment. The joy of video editing. Right, so we're back on track. We're getting a reading of, it was 42 frames per second, 41 frames per second. So that's already a massive improvement. Let's see what happens when we get out on track. And 45 frames per second. 45 frames per second. 46 frames per second. So just by lowering a few graphic settings, and we've not lost out on a lot, we haven't gotten rid of anything, we've not turned anything off, it's looking great, and we're at nearly 50 frames per second, which is much more drivable. I find 50 frames per second perfectly drivable. I know a lot of people would disagree with that. 60 at least. Some people 100, it's going to be 100. But 50 is drivable. But I mean, this is fluctuating. We're at 43 frames per second now. As the cars thin out, we'll get up into the 50s. Now, if I was to take those graphics settings down a bit further and lower a few of the others without turning anything off, I can get up to 70 frames per second. And do bear in mind, this is also with 60 cars on track, and we're using the worst possible conditions, because also rain, headlights and all the lighting that comes around the track when it rains, and all the reflections do put a big strain on the card. But it's running smoothly enough. 41 frames per second as I nearly go into the back of that BMW in front there. And as we go over those reflections there, you can see it went down to about 40 again. We're now up into the 50s. So it should stay like that for the rest of the race. But of course, we're not doing the rest of the race because this isn't a racing video. Well, there you go. So the answer to the question, I'm ever so sorry if I've waffled over this video a bit, guys, but honestly, it took me ages to find out how I could get this to work with this tool, or any way in which it would improve. So it's just in that situation where you're absolutely tanking it and your graphics card's at 100%, you can then get many more frames, and your graphics card usage will go down as well. But can you get better frames in Rfactor? Sort of, maybe. I don't know. What do you guys think? Have you tried this? Have you got great results from Rfactor 2? Is there something I'm missing? And also, I mentioned Assetto Corsa Composizione earlier. I'm not going to do a video with that because there's no point. Assetto Corsa Composizione has its own upscaling technology, i.e. DLSS and FSR built in. So, anyway, please get back to me in the comments. You can use Nvidia image scaling with Nvidia cards and AMD cards. So have you found a racing sim in which you've got absolutely fantastic results like Automobilist 2? Works great with Automobilist 2, really good. But is there another racing sim I haven't thought of? Or, you know, let me know what you think. Anyway, thank you ever so much for watching and putting up with my waffle. And happy sim racing, and as always, if you want this channel to survive, do me a favor and hit subscribe. May seem like a small thing to do, but it enables me to make more videos for you. By hitting that button, you can help us thrive. Subscribe and keep this channel alive. Don't cost nothing, don't take no time. Come on now, keep this channel alive.